네, 이제 마지막 강연입니다. 이번 세션의 마지막 강연의 제목은 Global Perspectives on Combination Product Regulation with Focus on Europe 이라는 제목입니다. 연자께서는 International Pharmaceutical Quality의 유러피언 에디터를 담당하고 계시고요. Dr. Jamieson, Janine입니다. Dr. Jamieson은 영국의 규제기관이죠. MHRA에서 오랫동안 근무하시면서 융복합 의료기기, 의료약품 의료기기, 융복합 의료제품에 초점을 맞추어서 여러 유럽의 인증기관들과 함께 협의를 진행해 오셨습니다. 또한 융복합 의료제품의 품질 측면에서 EMA의 지침서를 만드는데 처음부터 인발브 하셔서 가이드라인을 개발하신 엑스퍼트이십니다. 현재는 IPQ의 컨설턴트로 계시고 특별히 저희의 컨퍼런스를 IPQ 저널에 Hotspots in the Dialogue에 홍보해 주시고 여러 가지로 이 컨퍼런스에 응원을 많이 해 주시고 감사의 뜻을 보내주셨습니다. 큰 환영 부탁드리겠습니다.
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation to join this conference and to speak. It's an honour to be here and it's a very exciting time. So I'm going to talk to you about global perspectives on combination product regulation, and I'm going to focus on Europe. So what I'm going to talk about is are a number of things, including at the start and the finish about remembering the patient, because sometimes we get so involved in talking about regulations that we forget that at the end of the day it's the patient who wants these treatments and we need to make sure that they're accessible to them. I'll talk a little bit about my background as a pharmaceutical assessor at the UK Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. And then the evolving landscape for combination products in Europe. There's a lot happening and there's some positive moves with the EU pharma strategy to support innovation. And then I'll talk a little bit about the global landscape, new guidance and regulations, again, lots happening there. And then the importance of dialogue, collaboration and engagement. And at the end of the day, I'll remind everybody to remember that we're doing this for the patients. So the patient really doesn't mind whether a product is regulated as a drug, a device, a combination product. They really want to have the best treatment and they want to know that it's going to work and it's safe and that it's accessible as well. However, it does make a big difference with the regulations for whether a product is a medical device or a medicinal product. So for instance, in Europe, as we've heard already from Tina, then the products are regulated either as medicines or medical devices with very different pathways. And these have been changing recently in Europe, but it does make a big difference. And it involves secondary bodies. So for instance, if it's a medical device with ancillary substance, then the notified body needs to go to the medicines competent authority. And now with an integral medical device in a medicinal product, then the manufacturer has to go to the notified body first for submission. And then globally, there's a lot of different regulations, definitions, interactions between drugs and devices regulators. In some cases, strict adherence to local drug or device rules, which sometimes inhibits a global manufacturer from marketing in a particular region. And terminology is different. It's different between the worlds of medicines and medical devices. And globally, there's focus on, in some cases, essential principles, essential performance requirements, and general safety and performance requirements. So a little bit about my background at MHRA. I was at MHRA for 18 years as an assessor, a pharmaceutical assessor. And during that time, over the last 10, 12 years, I was focusing on devices incorporating ancillary drug substances. And that's how I got to know Tina and some of the people at FDA. Because I was speaking at conferences because everybody wanted to know how these products were regulated and how the systems worked and what the assessors were looking for. So through those conferences, I got to meet some really excellent people and learn a lot. So I learned about the FDA activities and outreach in particular, heard a lot about that, and industry challenges, especially for device engineers working in the pharma company and having their voices heard. And to that point, often silos between medicines and devices departments, both within industry, but also within regulatory agencies, and how there are very different regulatory processes and timelines for products that are regulated as devices or as medicines. So in MHRA, we realised that we needed to have more collaboration across the agency. So we set up a cross-agency working group involving people from the medicines department, the devices department, from pre-licensing and post-licensing. And we had pharmacists and medics and engineers, a really nice group, and we learned from each other, and we realised that we had some quite different perspectives. We also set up training sessions, and these were really well appreciated and again really useful to understand how differently people viewed a similar product in different ways depending on their background. In MHRA, we suggested a European guideline on this in 2015, and we'll talk about that later. It turned into a concept paper in 2017. So this was one of the first conferences that I went to when I realised quite how complex this area is and how the interaction between devices and medicines engineers and people within industry is a little bit difficult. So this is a credit to somebody who was at Novartis at the time, I think he was, or Roche, and he talked about the evolution of medicines within vials going through to pre-filled syringes and protective safety devices through to auto-injectors and on-body systems. And he showed about the increasing complexity and the increasing in device components. But this is all to the benefit of patients for longer dosing intervals, for patient treatments, for larger volumes and higher viscosity biologics medicinal products. So they're really valuable. And what we started to see at MHRA as well was that the difference in regulation. So for these more complex devices, these on-body devices, if it was a non-integral product, as Tina discussed earlier, then the device part needed to be CE marked. So for instance, on the left here for Repatha, the patient puts the cartridge of drug solution into the device at the point of use. Now, if that was a medical device, overall regulated product, that would be regarded as integral. But for medicinal products, this is regarded as non-integral. And so in that case, the device part with all the electronics is CE marked as a medical device, and the cartridge is regulated as a medicinal product. However, if you have a similar device and it's integral, so the medicine is actually inside the electronic device at the point of putting it onto the market, then that is regarded as an integral medicinal product. And the device components, which involve cells, electronics, mechanisms, then these come under the remit of the assessors at the Medicines Agency. And I'm sure you can imagine that we didn't have the skills and the expertise to address these. So that's partly why the medical device regulation was updated, so that the notified bodies with the expertise would be reviewing these parts. And increasingly, we see more and more new technologies emerging and converging with medicines. And one of the important things that, again, the FDA has been leading on for many years is human factors, design and usability of these combination products, as well as pure medical devices. And it's important to design them to reduce medication errors. So there's been a lot of guidance. There's a lot of guidance in Europe, and MHRA also worked on guidance. So on the left is what was happening in 2020, and now the dialogue is continuing, and at conferences now, FDA are very involved in helping people understand the importance of human factors, and there's some really good dialogue. So just going back in time a little bit, in May 2016, that was when I gave my last presentation on behalf of MHRA. This was to a biologics conference, talking about the regulatory challenges of drug device combination products. And I was talking about the current positive initiatives in the EU, about the importance of proportionate, appropriate, and risk-based regulation, and the importance of communication between all stakeholders on a level setting. However, we did highlight, and it's continuing in Europe now, the regulatory challenges for manufacturers, for competent authorities, and for notified bodies. We were reflecting on collaborative ways forward, taking into account the different regulatory regimes and FDA guidances. And we're participating in working parties for medicines and medical devices. And that involves at the EMA, the Quality Working Party, Biologics Working Party, the EU Innovation Office Network, the European Commission Borderline and Classification Working Group, ISO Change Management Working Group. There's a lot of activities going on then, and they still are continuing now, with the aim of developing proportionate, appropriate, and risk-based regulation. So I just want to give a shout out here to the FDA Office of Combination Products, because I've been following them for many years, and they've done so much great work and engagement in this space. And this is from a previous version, I think, of the Office of Combination Products website, but it just called out that FDA expected to receive large numbers of combination products because technological advances mean that the historical lines of separation between the different review units was going to be complicated. And this would raise regulatory, policy, and review management challenges, which they certainly do. And then our previous speaker today, I refer to this when I speak because it was a really good quote, because he was saying that we understand that regulatory uncertainty can stifle innovation, as companies may avoid developing products. And so to promote the continued innovation of combination products, we want to make sure the process for classifying and assigning these products is clear and efficient. And that was really visionary. There's also been discussion at conferences by the International Coalition of Medicines Regulatory Authorities. They're very focused just now on the COVID situation, but prior to that, there was a lot of good activity going on about international collaboration on activities. They have a number of different strategic priorities, and one of them is innovation. And that's recognising that there's increased connectivity, there can be customised healthcare solutions, in vitro diagnostic devices are also very important, robotic systems, and convergence integration with medicinal products. So back to the evolving European landscape. As we heard from Tina, there's the new medical device regulations and in vitro diagnostic regulations. The MDR was delayed by a year because of COVID, but these were really needed to recognise the change in technology over the years and the exciting future ahead. And part of the MDR is a change to the general safety and performance requirements. And these are applicable to combinations to make sure that the device component performs and is safe. There's an increasing emphasis on state-of-the-art, increasing focus on risk management systems, materials of construction, including chemical safety, and talking about a system approach rather than individual elements when things are used together, which is very relevant for combination products. And there's also new clauses and involvement of software and electronic systems. So in terms of guidance, again, Tina will have mentioned this, that there is current combination product guidance, which is in the process of being updated. It's really important because it helps to classify whether products are regulated as medicinal products or medical devices, depending on definitions. And those definitions are being updated. And so we eagerly await this guidance. So this is a timeline now to show how much collaboration has been going on over the time. And we started off in 2016 with the EMA Working Party on drug device combination products. The concept paper was published in the same time frame as the new medical device regulation. And then in 2018, we held a combination product workshop between TOPRA and RAPS, two regulatory organisations in Europe, and to discuss some of the challenges. And then following that, there's the EMA Medical Devices website and first question and answer document published. And the notified bodies across Europe started doing some collaboration and publishing guidance in May 2019. And the draft EMA quality guidance was published in 2019 as well. And that received over 800 comments because it raised a few issues that lots of people had comments on. And that was even with industry collaboration. And then following that, a task force was set up at the European Commission with all the different medicines regulators, devices regulators, and EMA to try and collaborate across the different organisations. And at that time, there was additional comments from medicines and medical devices regulators and notified bodies. And that has resulted in finally the updated guidance that's been published very recently in Europe. I just wanted to mention briefly about combined advanced therapy medicinal products, because I was asked about that in preparation for this meeting. And in 2010, the European Medicines Agency and notified bodies got together to try and develop some guidance for where ATMPs, advanced therapy medicinal products, were going to be used with devices. And there was a lot of really good work, collaboration put into that. But I think there was a lot of challenges as well, bringing those two worlds together. Some guidance was published, but it actually has never been used. And the feedback is that for these combination products, where there's a device part within an advanced therapy medicinal product, it was felt that the pathway was complex, that it wasn't clear, and that there was an additional burden of going through the process, trying to understand the interaction between the agency and notified bodies in practice. So that was back in 2014, and I think we're at the point now where things are really happening to try and bring devices and medicines people together in Europe. So just a couple of examples of combined ATMPs that are theoretical. Cells embedded in a biodegradable matrix or a scaffold. And as I said, the procedure hasn't actually been used yet. And the Article 117 that Tina referred to doesn't apply to ATMPs. They're developing some new guidance. But one product that isn't ATMP and does involve a device is Spherox, that was for cartilage repair. It was approved in 2017. It involves the use of a pre-filled syringe and an applicator. But at the time, 2017, the pre-filled syringe has been regarded, which is the historical state of it being a primary packaging unit. So in the future, that might change with the new focus on device components. So there are new roles of EMA and the Medicines Authority now with devices. So there's 5 key areas of device regulations affecting pharmaceuticals. And this is, EMA have been talking quite a lot at conferences about the changes involved. So there's devices with ancillary medicinal substances, as Tina mentioned, there's companion diagnostics, there's medicinal products in combination with a medical device, which I'll focus on. There's the challenge of borderline products, which is the classification about whether something should be regulated as a medicine or a medical device. And then there's something quite new, which is devices composed of substances that are systemically absorbed but considered to be devices. So these are the new roles of the European Medicines Agency with the support of the individual agencies in each of the national member states. So it is a complex landscape in Europe. It's recognised, and over the years maybe it's been difficult to bring the 2 worlds together, but now there are big efforts to try and help bring these 2 worlds together and get everybody working together. So because of the new technologies, the new challenges, the new regulations, then the European Commission, notified bodies, medicines authorities, device regulatory authorities, and the industry, stakeholders, as well as patients, are becoming more involved. This is a busy slide, but I just wanted to highlight this because this is the quality guideline from the European Medicines Agency on drug device combination products. It was originally called drug device combinations, but the name has now changed to recognise that EMA look at the medicines part of the combination and the notified bodies look at the devices part. So the guideline title is Guideline on Quality Documentation for Medicinal Products when used with a medical device. One thing I wanted to point out was that the section on non-integral drug device combinations has now changed, and it actually reflects a little bit more the situation in the US, because now it's talked about as co-packaged and referenced devices. And I'm not sure whether Tin will have spoken about this today, but certainly in the US, I think the cross-labeled type of combination products is a challenge, and maybe this is a point for alignment. And the annexes about the notified body opinion, they've now been taken out of the EMA guidance, and a Team NB paper is available to describe the notified body template. The good thing about the procedural guidance, the Q&A, questions and answer document that has been recently updated with lots of changes, is that it's a living document. And the idea is that these Q&A is easier to update than a guideline. So with more and more questions coming through, then it's easier to provide guidance to people in a more real-time way. So at the point of this presentation, there were some more questions, there's some clarification on existing questions, and there's certainly a lot more questions coming in now. It's been updated, but it's great that it is a living document. At the same time, there are European strategies going on to future-proof the European regulatory framework. At EMA, there's a regulatory science, similar to what's going on now, maybe in Korea. There's a regulatory science strategy with different pillars to look at innovation and address a lot of the challenges of the new technologies that are coming through. There's also the European Medicines Agencies network, because remember, in Europe we have lots of different member states, 27 different member states, and they all work to help support the administrative unit that is the EMA. And they have their regulatory strategy network as well. And now more recently, there's the EC, the European Commission Pharma Strategy, which is looking to change the legislation around combination products in Europe. There's been a lot of stakeholder meetings, of feedback on consultations to listen to the different stakeholders, public stakeholders, as well as industry groups, and look to change the way that we regulate and deal with combination products in Europe. And a potential future pathway that's been discussed because of the complexities is that for complex products that bring together different aspects, there's a possibility to create a centralized European pathway. So if a product combines different aspects, then it can go to a central point in Europe rather than going to lots of different individual units, and then it can be dealt with. And so behind the scenes, the relevant experts can all come together to decide on the best way forward. And that's hopefully going to be at an early stage of development, as well as at the point of authorization. So this is something that's being discussed at the moment and proposed for the future. In the meantime, there's the Innovation Task Force at the European Medicines Agency, and individual agencies have their own innovation offices where companies can go along and apply and talk free of charge and have an informal dialogue about the challenges that they have with their products, not being quite sure about the pathway to go down, and they can get feedback on how to do that. And it's a brainstorming type of meeting, and they're informal, and it's an open discussion, and it's partly for the regulators to learn about the products that are being developed by industry. So just in summary from the discussions that were at this recent conference, TOPRA Symposium, it involved the European Medicines Agency and the Commission. The FDA took part, and also industry, and that was just very recently in September. And just to point out the take-home messages that EMA wanted to share, and that was about trying to build agile collaborative frameworks, making the most of all the experts across Europe, and continuing the dialogue, and encouraging stakeholders to engage EMA when they have complex developments, to have early multi-stakeholder engagement where possible, inviting in notified bodies, and importantly, to stimulate cross-disciplines and global scientific discussions. So hopefully this meeting today will help towards that as well. Dialogue, collaboration and engagement is very important. There's been a lot of industry collaboration across industry groups, even across organisations, trying to work together to develop their own thinking and suggestions on how they can regulate and go forward with their development for combination products. And this sort of engagement has been very much recognised by European regulators. And again, going back to FDA, as I said, I've been following them for a number of years now, and they engage with the AdvaMed and Combination Products Coalition to get feedback on what are the challenges and what can we focus on to try and make the development process easier for everybody, and the need for coordination and trusting engagement. I think that was such a nice quote. It's incredibly helpful. And that's from Tim's colleague, Barwiner at the Office of Combination Products. And then recently we've had lots of conferences. There's so many conferences now talking about the interactions between health authorities, notified bodies and globally. And then these are just some quotes that you can read later. I've highlighted in blue about notified bodies and regulators at EMA being optimistic about the future, about involving more notified body engagement, and how the importance of an international forum where all the different regulators can get together and work out how to have some sort of global alignment. And again, just recently, there was a conference a couple of weeks ago where there was mention again and again about the dialogue, about the interplay between devices and medicines, about not working in silos any longer, about using holistic strategies, taking a big picture view, and this being a global journey. And this was engagement at a conference from the European Commission, the European Medicines Agency, notified bodies, FDA, MHRA, and academia as well. And moving on to the global landscape now. There have been harmonisation efforts a number of years ago, and the Asian Harmonisation Working Party did actually produce a document that's referred to a lot when we talk about global harmonisation. And it outlined the state at that time of all the different regions, and it was an excellent document. Unfortunately, it wasn't continued, but I think now is a potentially really good time for that sort of work to go on. And ICH, the International Conference on Harmonisation, Q12, it is looking at life cycle management of medicinal products, but it is actually taking into account the combination products, and so the challenges of the rapid life cycle of devices compared to medicines. It is actually in the ICH Q12 document. In June 2020, RAPS and TOPRO got together again to have a stakeholder workshop on looking at how we can align. And I think it's recognised that the legislation, as well as the definitions and lots of different things, are so different across different regions. It's hard to talk about harmonisation, but we can align. So we had sessions from the regulators, from FDA, again, European Medicines Agency and notified bodies, Malaysia, from Anvisa in Brazil, Health Canada and MHRA in the UK. And then we heard from industry about the challenges that they come across and how we could come and find solutions to work to the future. Common themes were that in most areas, the regulation is based on the primary mode of action, but sometimes the primary mode of action can be difficult to agree on. Good communication is essential between devices parts and medicines parts of the agencies and in industry as well. And how, if possible, and leveraging previous work and approvals in other regions, recognition is really helpful. And there's an opportunity here because new connected and digital AIs, they're a big challenge, but there's not really much precedence. So it's a good opportunity to try and align at this time. I just wanted to give recognition to Malaysia, because what they talked about at the conference were that they've updated their guidance recently. They engaged a lot with industry. They spent a lot of time talking within the medical devices and the medicines agencies on how they could move forward on this and consulting on their guidance. And what they came up with was a recognition of if a device part or a medicinal part had been recognised in and approved in other regions, then they would have an abbreviated assessment for that. And so that was if it's been authorised in Australia, Canada, in Europe and Japan and the US, then they would accept that and take an abbreviated assessment path, which would be great for the future. We also heard then, and there's still active work ongoing, it's an ASTM standard guide for combination product definitions. And this is an industry and regulator forum to try and harmonise on some common terminology that can be a starting point for more global alignment. Because it's recognised that most companies develop for the for the globe internationally. And so when dealing with lots of different regulations, it makes it very complicated. It increases the costs and the time to market. And then when there's changes, it's even more complicated. And so it's really beneficial to everybody if we can find some way of alignment. Some of the definitions that will be coming out soon in the guidance are for combination product, single entity and single integral products, combined use products, platform technology, and software as a medical device. And there's some others as well. Hopefully you'll see the draft soon. There's a lot of activity going on in different regions, and these are just some that I've picked out recently, from Saudi Arabia, from Canada, and from China. There's a lot of activity. Everybody's trying to work out how can we try to make sense of our current regulations and then hopefully align to help with the development of these products. And it's a great pleasure to be here at this Regulatory Science Conference now. Obviously, there's things going on in this region as well that are very exciting. And interestingly, in the China meeting, one of the things that was pointed out, Xavier just recently, in the China guidance, they have they unfortunately don't regard combination products, pre-filled syringes, as combination products. They regard them as a medicinal product. And so in other regions is a little bit different there. So talking about alignment, then there was a recent conference, very recent conference on risk management run by the DIA, and it was focused on risk management with both industry and regulators taking part. And the aim of it was to look to see if we could align on patient-centered risk management and quality principles. And again, a shout out to FDA, because they were helping to lead on this conference, and they've also been leading on a technical report by Amy looking at risk management of combination products and looking at best practices and recommendations using international risk management principles of ISO 14971 and ICH Q9 risk management for medicinal products. And he pointed out that there's lots of opportunities for leveraging knowledge and bridging and platforms, utilising new technologies and enabling convergence through these principles. So it would be really helpful if we could align on these principles. So back to remembering the patient. In summary, with all the different activities going on now, hopefully we can align on the principles of risk management and quality, usability, to make sure that we can make these products available for patients. There's a lot of challenges that are recognised. There's a lot of really good work going on, and there's some big changes in various regions. But there's really great positive initiatives for industry and regulator collaboration. So of all of the topics today, communication, collaboration, harmonisation and alignment, risk-based, proportionate and patient-focused regulation is the aim, I think, of everybody. So with that, thank you, and I look forward to the Q&A later. Thank you very much.